Welcome to another episode of The Breakdown. I'm your host, Nate Pike. We're gonna do this is gonna be a weird few months, folks, because there's all of these municipal and school board elections, and there's a bajillion candidates running for all of the things, and there's absolutely no way that we can talk to all of them, but we're gonna try to talk to some of them, those that raise their hands and say, hey, can we have a conversation? Absolutely. We will show up for that. And given all of the issues that are going on in education and the continued efforts of the David Parker to turn education back 150 years. It's very important that those who are willing to answer the questions answer the questions. So, with that in mind, tonight, very excited to welcome to the program a Edmonton Public School Board candidate for Ward A. I said it right.
You did.
Very excited to welcome to the program Nicole Renaud. Nicole, thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I've just been really appreciating how much you've been sharing, raising awareness around public education. It's really important. So
It
I
is an
appreciate that.
it is an important issue, and I'm going to say on the record here, just so that you and I can throw up the we'll do shields up. That's what we'll do. We'll do shields up in this episode. The conversation that we're going to have is a conversation between the breakdown and you as a candidate for the Edmonton Public School Board. You do not claim to be representing anybody other than the candidacy. I can barely claim to represent myself on the best of days. So shields up. Let's put a bottle of bourbon on a cooler somewhere. That's a very niche joke. Um, let's start before we get into why would you run for public office. I'm going to ask one quick question,
Sure.
very easy, yes or no, and then I want you to introduce yourself to the audience. Are you in any way affiliated with Take Back Alberta or its subsidiaries?
No, I am absolutely thoroughly. I guess the short answer would be no.
Okay.
No.
Promise.
Pinky promise.
Okay, perfect. So with that out of the way, who is Nicole Renaud?
Oh, great question. So I guess how should I answer that in terms of my background or why am I running?
Who are you? Like, where are you from? What do you do? Or
Sure.
as much as you
Yeah.
can, what do you do? What's your do you have any background in education? Have you been
Yeah.
to school? All of the
Yeah, so definitely I would say I am a product of public schools. I grew up working class, and public schools, especially this strong structure that we have built over many decades, have allowed me the kind of like it's allowed public schools to serve as the kind of great equalizer. So even though my parents and my family didn't have much money, I was still afforded those opportunities that everyone else was afforded. And so I was able to go to university where I studied human rights, political science, and then further on to economic geography on my master's and PhD. And I got really curious about, especially like community economic development, research, policy analysis. I'm a big nerd at heart, so there's a lot to explore. And I got into international development, working in Peru and Malawi, doing field work. Briefly taught in Mexico, and did teaching on the side, English as a second language. And then the more, more I learned, more I saw, the more I wanted to kind of grow roots here at home. And I started a family, and I have three awesome kids. And I've done a lot of work in advocacy in general, but it was when we found out and that my son had some pretty serious disabilities that the advocacy became really personal. And it was through schools when just as early on as kindergarten, we met resistance to him being included. And already the school shutting doors on his future and seeing it as him as a lost cause. And so that kind of introduced public education advocacy to me, and I got connected with Inclusion Alberta, learned how to advocate, and started helping other families advocate who were in similar situations as mine. And what happened this past year, I don't know if you followed in terms of, well, I can't recall if Calgary QP locals were impacted as well with the strikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for Edmonton Public School Board, nearly 3,700 children were removed from public schools on the basis of disability, which is illegal. And so that was kind of the trigger point for me where I just had enough. And I decided, and I wasn't seeing anyone who are the decision makers, who are in positions of power, standing up for the kids. And not just disabled kids, but all kids, right? And the teaching staff as well. And so that's where I decided to take kind of my background, my experiences, and throw my hat in the ring. And again, use those skills that I've built over the years and my knowledge base to run, or at least, as best as I can and fight as hard as I can, because our kids deserve it, to be honest.
Pretty thorough answer. So you've traveled a bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Um, Now there's some, and in full disclosure to the audience, I told you what the main topics that I wanted to talk
Yes,
about
yeah.
here. So none of what I'm going to say is going to be a tremendous surprise, but there's some pretty big things that are going on in education right now. One of the things that we've seen the premier of Alberta doing is she's taken the very recent position of, we fund so great. I don't know why the ATA keeps saying that we're the lowest funded jurisdiction in the country, because we do so much funding. If the funding's not getting to the students, then it's got to be the school boards. We're going to have conversations about that. So she's already framing a very adversarial tone with the current spate of school boards, but also the new ones. Um, why would you want to get involved in that?
Honestly, like I would do absolutely anything for my kids. And that translates to I can do things for them as well as many, many others. And I don't want to say bring it on because that, but I'm not going to back down. I haven't so far. I never will. My kiddo stayed in school every single day of those 9 weeks of the strike because even though the vice principal was running after us across the schoolyard saying you have to remove your disabled child from school, we were able to respond that's illegal on, section 15 of the charter, and no, we will not be party to our son's discrimination. So but yeah, that's a great question. But yeah, it's gotten to the point where, how you say the personal is political. That's what it is. And in terms of the issue with the school boards that you bring up, and what's been the conversations arising recently regarding how the struggle to understand how underfunded our schools are. I guess one thing that really concerns me about this narrative is, have you noticed what's happening in Ontario right now?
You know, I wish I could.
Okay.
The There's this thing called Alberta, and it
There's a
just
lot going on here.
a little bit going on these days.
Yeah. So with Ontario, the Minister of Education there has followed a very similar line of rhetoric in terms of it started with saying, oh, like they're also extremely underfunded. I also have been supporting some of my friends back in Ontario with their advocacy needs because they also don't have enough support and resources in the classrooms there. And it started with the very same, oh, what are school boards wasting their dollars on or whatever. And so then they took over, I think it was 5 school boards, like the provincial government took over 5 school boards and saying, you know what, you guys can't manage this properly. We're going to take over that. And now they've very recently kind of put all trustees on notice across Ontario, saying they may look to dissolving public school boards across the province. And I'm seeing that very same, not to be alarmist, but I'm just seeing a kind of similar pattern happening in the rhetoric and narrative here that concerns me. I just wanted to mention that.
No, that sounds super relevant.
Yeah.
I mean, my follow-up question has to be, so are you like not a fan of job security then? Because
Well, this is a part-time job, even though it could easily be, full-time.
what do you think is the disconnect? I mean, there's the provincial government likes to play a little bit of a shell game by saying, okay, well, yeah, but if we're just talking about public school funding, then, but if we look at all of these other areas and then we add it all up together and you squint your eye and look at it just right sideways, then wow, we're doing great. Um, do you think it is simply a function of we do not fund students appropriately, or do you think it is also or is it a function of school boards are bad at their jobs, or is it a function of both, or sometimes like what's your take on that?
No, that's definitely a good question. So there are areas I think that we could be better at, like our school boards could be better at. Should like one year our superintendent salary was 330,000. I feel like that's kind of high, especially if it's 10 times the amount of the average EA's salary. Having said that, that's not the reason that our schools are bursting at the seams and we can't afford kind of everything. Um, yeah, that's a tough question. And I mean, I don't know if this is going to kind of adequately answer it, but maybe, just maybe, if we didn't fund private schools up to 70% of their budgets with public dollars, maybe we could better fund public schools or even charter schools, which, even though in legislation they're supposed to have equitable access, that isn't actually the case.
So let me ask the question in a slightly different way. Um, if you had a magic wand and you were going to fix the education system, what would be the one thing that you would go,
Oh,
bam, fixed? And it can't be money.
oh, okay.
Because you can throw enough money at any problem, it
Yes.
will eventually go away under the sheer weight and volume of the coinage. But um, you will also exacerbate the existing problems. So, what would be the one thing that you would magic wand?
I would magic wand, I think, the public civic engagement, public engagement. I really, really think that's key. We don't have enough people caring about public education. A lot of people will say, well, I don't have kids in school, so, whatever. But public education, a strong public education system connects to absolutely everything in our society, our economy, lower crime rates, greater social mobility, greater equality, everything. And we just have this disinterested citizenship. And for example, the last municipal elections in Edmonton, only 27% voted for a trustee of eligible voters. So
How many voted in the overall election?
I think it was 38%, which apparently was an improvement.
So there's just a lot of people being like, well, I'll vote for city council, but this school trustee thing, that sounds like it's not my horse, not my barn.
Yeah, or yeah, exactly. So the reason, because you said I couldn't say money, I really think that if more people had, their minds turned to, like, had their finger on the pulse of public education, I don't feel like these shenanigans, if you will, would happen so easily or readily.
Well, I always find it fascinating when somebody says, I don't have kids in school, or
Yes.
I'm not going to have kids, or I'm sending my kids to a private school, or whatever the excuse is.
Yeah.
Because, like, have you ever been in line at a grocery store? Because the type of people that you're going to interact with in your day to day are formed in many of them, if not, I would argue most, are formed in public schools. And so if
Yeah.
you have crappy public schools that are not educating people appropriately, then we're going to have a populace that takes more emotional bandwidth, even if you don't have kids of your own. So it does absolutely affect everybody. As much as I hate to admit it, um, I think David Parker would agree with you too, because his whole shtick is people aren't engaged enough in these processes, and I, to I mean that's David Parker's exploiting that as a weakness, I would argue. But hey, it's
Good point.
common ground where you can find it. Uh,
Oh my.
um, okay, I want to hit you on specific things.
Yeah.
And I'm going to save the big one, especially given what you said in your introduction. I'm going to save the big one for the end. Let's talk about the book bans,
Yes.
because this is, I believe the technical term is a shit show. Um, and I say that for a couple of different reasons. One of them
Yes.
being that school boards are being left to their own independent devices how they choose to navigate this thing. The chair of the Red Deer public school, so I'm probably getting the name wrong. The chair of the school board in Red Deer, she was very, very clear. Red Deer already has themselves a list at the press conference where they announced the ministerial directive. Um, we've been getting reports from teachers who are being told that they have to digitize any books that they have in their classrooms.
Oh, you post that. That's
Yeah. So that it's easy to search and track. Apparently, these school boards have never heard of Google Books, but what are you going to do? Um, and so there's this incredible latitude that has been afforded to all of the different school boards across the province. How would you like to execute on these book bans? And I'm going to keep calling them book bans because that's what they are. Um, what's your thoughts on the book bans? And I mean, Edmonton is one of the areas that was heavily targeted in the
yeah.
research air quotes that the UCP did to determine what areas needed to be targeted. Um, so Edmonton's very clearly under the microscope. Go on book bans.
Yeah. Just for the record, I am absolutely fully against book bans. They are against intellectual freedom. They are anti discourse. They discourage critical thinking. And also, they're just an indicator of authoritarianist kind of vibes, let's say. Um, and it is very disturbing that not only are we talking book bans, while some books, let's say like the Bible, will contain, you know, problematic material like rape, slavery, any murder and such. And that's okay under religious freedom. But where's the intellectual freedom? Where's the freedom to read and to exchange ideas? And especially these days, we need more critical thinking than ever before. I actually have a little free library that I built out in front of my house, and I want to just populate it with all the panned books, to be honest. And I can't, as I'm sure a lot of people have pointed out, they are targeting the LGBTQ community and authors, and that's not a coincidence, and I just think it's disgusting. I think it. What does that do? I'm a member myself of the LGBT community, and like what? Just thinking as a young person, in school, trying to find themselves, trying to figure things out in an environment hostile, right? Um, Homophobic and transphobic environment, and you're bombarded with this messaging in a million different ways, and then to have these opportunities to find yourself and connect with your community, like being not only taken away, but described as, gross and however, what have you. So, yeah, I guess that I can't recall the next or the other part of your question, but
I mean, that was
those
pretty
are my
much,
kind of overall thoughts
yeah,
about it.
I basically said go on the book bans. So,
Oh, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
but I
I'm
think
against them.
one of the things that's important to highlight here, and I'm going to throw it in here because God knows if I don't, there's going to be somebody who shows up who's like, "You guys want to show these materials to small children?" Nobody is
Oh, yes.
advocating for that, um,
No, no.
and it's sorry, it's about age appropriate, right?
Yes. And you brought up another point that I forgot to mention is again, the government is stepping in to do the job of the librarians, which schools can no longer afford to have. Um, I think EPSB, so Edmonton Public School Board, has 4 full-time librarians out of 214 schools. And my kiddo's own school has had to convert their library into a classroom because the schools are bursting at the seams and there's no librarian and they would just put like books in the hallway. And so that is, again, a major problem here is the government is criticizing schools for the librarians, which they don't fund anymore, for not doing their librarian, like for the librarians not doing their jobs, even though they're not there anymore.
Yeah. It's
So,
wild, and there will be some people who I'm sure will hear that and go, "Oh, well, if the books are just in the hallways and they're not being supervised, then well, oh, we got to make sure these books aren't on the shelves." No, that's a symptom of the greater problem, and if you don't address the greater
yeah.
problem, it's like if somebody's continually starting a campfire in the middle of your living room and you go, "Oh, my house keeps getting lit on fire. I don't understand why this is happening. So I guess I'll uh, put a sprinkler system on my front porch so my front porch doesn't burn down." Okay, cool. But there's still people lighting campfires in your living room. Maybe you should deal with that. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we addressed the bullshit argument of you want to people are wanting to show these books to kids that they're not appropriate. Nobody's making that argument except
Exactly. Yeah.
who
Ye-
are arguing for the book bans.
Absolutely. And absolutely age and again that's like librarians are magic, I swear. Like I grew up just with a profound love of libraries, public libraries, because it's more than just the books, it's the community that they foster and create, right? And but they also have like their job is hard and no one can just like random people can't swoop in and do their job, right? Like so I just I feel for the librarians. I can't imagine what they're thinking. It must be just beyond frustrating. And just again, their positions and expertise are being undermined and undervalued.
And the irony to me of the whole, and we'll move on to the next topic in just a sec, but the irony to me of the whole debate around the librarians piece is like I was fortunate enough to go to a school where there was a librarian.
Nice.
Um, and I also my grandmother was a librarian. And in either location, if I tried to bring a book home, or I was engaging in some shenanigans, I'll say, they were on me like white on rice. It
Yes.
was always like, oh no, you're not taking that book. And so having that expertise available
Yeah.
is critically important. And the fact that it's absent in so many schools, 236 based on the numbers that you just threw out in
I
Edmonton alone.
think the numbers I got were possibly outdated because there were more cuts happening.
Oh, so
So
there might
there's
be less.
well, there's about a dozen who are very part-time, and I'm talking out of like 1.0 being full-time, like zero point 0.2.
Mm.
So, and a lot of those will be, say, library texts as opposed to like the full and I mean library texts are very important as well, but just showing that kind of like the constant leak of capacity leaking out of
Yeah.
our schools. Yeah.
Let's talk about curriculum.
Let's talk about it.
So the UCP have this. fascinating relationship with curriculum. I have my curriculum T-shirt upstairs, but there is this tendency for the UCP when it when it comes to just about everything, but particularly when it comes to matters of public education, to sort of shoot first and ask questions later. And we saw that with the initial rollout of the curriculum, which was a literally being revised the night that it was uploaded on the fly. We've seen some minor revisions made, but we've had a conversation with Dr. Carla Peck just a few months ago about the curriculum specifically, and she's very, very clear. It's a slightly better version of bad, but that doesn't make it great. So how do you envision, and again, like so much of this comes back down to how do you envision being in a school trustee role and bridging the gap between parents like me who are seeing these things roll out and going, what in the actual, and a
Yeah,
provincial government that says, yeah, we're just going to do it. Like, how do you,
let her rip.
yeah, how do you navigate that as a potential school board trustee?
No, that's a really, really good question, and definitely one I want to dig into more. Um, so, what really, really, a lot of things really bothered me about not just the product of the current curriculum, but the process of it being made. You I mean, you can call it consultation and then not use anyone's feedback, but that's not right. And I feel like that's what happened, right? Saying, oh, we consulted with teachers and we consulted with, Indigenous rights holders and such. But if you're just asking for their opinion, but then you don't implement it, what is the value in that? It's so problematic. I remember looking through the curriculum and seeing direct copying and pasting from Wikipedia. And I don't know, I have higher standards that I'd like to hold, our public schools to. And I honestly think it needs to be redone properly. And we can also take the opportunity to address some of the like truth and reconciliation calls to action that do pertain to education. And there's quite a handful of them. And you have to forgive me, I don't recall all of them right now, but it's just such an opportunity. And I'm very worried about even what the PATs that were rolled out. I don't know how old your kiddos are.
They were inflicted with those.
Oh, I'm so, my sympathies. So was one of mine. He just wrote the grade 6 math PAT, and it was shocking. This is a kiddo who he's a even bigger nerd than I am, and he loves math, straight A student, the MIPIs, the math intervention programming instrument, 100%, 100% all the time, and he failed his the grade 6 PAT, and then I started googling around, and I saw on Reddit and some other forums teachers posting anonymously, but saying, "Have you guys noticed what's happening with the math PAT for grade 6?" There are some who mentioned even a gifted class. The average was 42%, and like, and that's just math. And I guess I'm feeling fortunate that my son doesn't seem impacted. I know if that was me as a kid, I would have been devastated failing an exam like that I worked hard for. And that could be enough to turn kids off who, struggling or not. So yeah, I just think that it's very, very concerning. The quality isn't there. The number of outcomes are like I hear in some subjects have doubled the number of outcomes that they're supposed to be. So that reduces like the opportunity to like actually teach the material in depth. Critical thinking isn't being prioritized. And again, kind of going back to my like dream, if I could, put change one thing, it would be to have that engaged citizenry, and that includes critical thinking. And so I'm just worried.
How do you advocate as like how do you view advocating as a school board trustee to the province?
Honestly, I would kind of I would want to really collaborate with the other fellow trustees. And this is another big piece because, at least with Edmonton, these are 9 people on the board. So it's not just one. And being able to function and work together is another really key piece there. But I would want to definitely strategize with them on advocating directly to the province. But I'd also want to open up more public engagement so that we actually have town halls, which don't currently happen, so that we can involve the public more on these questions and these pieces. And if we could have a stronger kind of backing of the public, it would be nice to see, okay, can we revisit this curriculum so that we can make it much stronger, um, and just kind of repair a lot of those areas that are clearly deficient and not working and are just going to harm our students. And again, like it's just so many missed opportunities. I just feel like, yeah, we need a rewrite. And I would just look to, again, more public engagement to get those ideas and get that support, as well as the direct advocacy pieces to the government.
I mean, I love that you bring up the importance of a board being able to work collaboratively and not function in a toxic environment because I have it on good authority. If it's a toxic school board, the Ministry of Education might just reach in and disband it. I don't know, like 20 years ago or something. I'm just, I, it's important to work collaboratively. Um,
It really is. Yes.
Here's the big piece, and this is one that's very clearly coming, because you can see the messaging starting to telegraph it, and this goes back again to what Danielle Smith has been talking about, in regards to classroom complexity. She made a comment on, I believe it was her radio show not very long ago, where she was like, we've tried being inclusive, and maybe we've just tried too hard. Maybe we need to just go back, which is to me bonkers for a whole
Yes.
very long list of reasons. I could probably do a half hour on it, but we're here to talk to you, so I won't. But um, I would like it if you could talk a little bit about, and we'll break it down by points. Should classrooms be integrated? So having kids with diverse needs, I'll say, whether or not we're talking about kids who have like G tubes that need a medical aid to help them with, whether or not we're talking about kids who are anywhere from profoundly neurodivergent to it's a little neurospicy. Should classrooms be integrated?
Um, so I will say, I don't want to say no, just in that integrated isn't the same as inclusive.
Okay, fair point.
Integrated,
Fair point.
no, and here's the thing. Integrated is what's happening in part right now, and to what Danielle Smith is referring to. She's saying we didn't actually try inclusion. We have integration, which is basically proximity. It's having diverse learners and people with diverse needs just like existing in proximity with their needs not necessarily being met. Should classes be inclusive? 100%. Schools are a microcosm of society. If we're not including everyone in school, when does it start? After school? When they're adults? No, this is a pipeline to institutionalization, is what it is. And 100% schools should be inclusive. A lot of places do operate where that's just, the de facto way it is. Not all school boards and school jurisdictions have these segregated setups, even. Um, and also, there's just a lot of evidence out there showing, a lot of research showing that inclusion has stronger outcomes, not only for the kiddos with higher needs, but everybody in the classroom, including teachers. Do they need more support, more funding, more professional development opportunities, smaller class sizes? 100%, 100%. It There's a lot to learn and a lot to do, but money alone will not fix the ableism that underlies this system that leads to segregation. So when she says we've tried inclusion, it didn't work, we actually haven't tried inclusion.
I take your point on the terminology 100%. The I think one of the challenges that exists is there's the callousness of this conversation has gotten to a point where there are some people who are saying, well, if there are kids that are they have their needs are such that they're going to be disruptive, and again, I'm air quoting that for the audio
Yeah.
audience, then they should be in their own classrooms. They shouldn't be ruining, air quotes again, the the learning environment of the kids who have more normotypical needs. Um, and I don't like that the segregation piece. That is to me, and I didn't want to speak for you, of course, but that's to me like one of the worst things that we could possibly do if we start.
It is.
Yeah, okay, good then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is. It's again that pipeline to institutionalization. It does show like lower academic outcomes, lower outcomes in terms of social emotional development, lower employment, lower independent living outcomes and odds in terms of those with additional needs. But just in terms of overall academic outcomes, they're shown as either the same or less for the kind of regular peers in like in classrooms that don't have a mix of learners when inclusion is done properly. And yes, of course, there's diversified learning strategies and extra supports needed, but it's worth it. And I honestly wish I could have my son's teacher here to just speak to it. In terms of all the benefits having my son, he's non-speaking, level 3 autistic, and the light of my life. And the amount of friendships, real friendships, that he has in that class, the amount of kiddos who've come up to us and said how much they love having him in class because he makes them feel safe and they love being his friend. And, he's someone that they feel like they can connect with. And there's, it's just, he's been such a benefit to his classmates and his teachers who've learned, it's improved their own teaching, like their own professional development to have this experience. And yeah, I'm definitely like going on a thought tangent here, but a lot of people see it as taking away from the regular kids, which honestly, and this may be a bit extreme, but it does remind me a little bit of kind of eugenics type thinking, separate out the disabled, right?
Yeah,
And we're better than that as a society. And it's time to actually see the value that diversity brings.
100%.
And yeah, they just, kiddos like mine and different than mine, um, enrich in the class environment.
I mean, I look at it, I don't mind saying, I was sharing with you earlier, I have some neurodivergent people in my
Mm-hmm.
family. And I've had to do all of my learning about those things in the last few years. And it would have been great if I had a bit more exposure. And some of it is a
Yes.
function of the fact that I'm old and we didn't diagnose things very well back then. But those skills are not limited to the classroom. They will potentially be, well, they will be lifelong skills, and they could
Yes.
potentially have a direct impact on your life. So there's lots of different ways that it has value, I would argue. Now, you brought up an interesting piece there, though, because the inclusion piece is critically important. There's no, there shouldn't be any debate about that. Um, the appropriate supports so that those kids who are not um, who require additional supports
Yeah.
um, get those supports. That is a mess in the province right now. And a part of the reason
Yeah.
why it's not a mess, why it is a mess rather, is because there are school boards who have taken the position of, well, we're going to define how we measure these things in the safest way for us, not what is going to be the most effective way for those kids. So I'm curious. I mean, you come with from this background of advocacy. How important is it for you, if you were to be elected as a school board trustee, to make sure that the needle is moved on how these things are measured and how services are delivered? Because I suspect my suspicion is that there's a lot of school boards that are going, holy hell, we do not have the money to provide these services. And if we acknowledge that these services are needed, we're going to be in real trouble because that means that we're not providing the standard of education that we're supposed to under the Education Act. And we don't want to do that. So everybody's fine. How do you untangle that?
That is a tricky question for sure. And I do need to brush up on some of the changes that have happened in the past few years. But I do believe with every kind of certain diagnoses, it comes with extra funding dollars that are supposed to translate to kind of added supports overall. I am very rusty though on the exact movement and amounts because it has been a few years. And just kind of going back to what we mentioned, even though there's a lot more diagnoses happening now than say back in the 80s and such, there's still a lot of kiddos going undiagnosed. The wait times are years now due to healthcare changes and such. But yeah, so um, sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, I'm just
Like,
curious, like how does a school board trustee or an aspiring school board
mhm.
trustee, how do you prioritize with all of the other things that are going on? How do you prioritize making sure that the school boards are taking the appropriate accountability for measuring and delivering on the needs of students?
No, that's really good. I guess like one thing too is to consider the global needs of the classroom. And a lot of, um, say, fellow parents with disabled kiddos will really, really want, say, one-to-one EAs, even though there's actually a lot of research out there showing the benefits of shared EAs. Not to say that one EA in a classroom of 56 students, which, by the way, was the biggest class size in the Edmonton Public School last year.
That's
Um, so not to say that one EA is enough and like they're sharing the whole, half of 100 kids. But again, considering trying to move away a little bit from the like othering of, okay, these kids have needs and these ones are regulars. What are the needs of the classroom? And then addressing those. And yes, you're absolutely right. There aren't enough EAs and supports, and class sizes are way too big. I don't honestly don't know how teachers are doing this with these sizes. But yeah, as a trustee, that would be our job to again push for smaller class sizes and support families in terms of like the behavior support plans and just again identifying what is needed and push the government to, because it ultimately is the provincial government's legal responsibility, which does get shifted to the school boards, but they do have a legal responsibility to ensure everyone's needs are met. And I would see it as like really lying in that kind of advocacy piece. And also, like you said, like better accounting for the needs and not trying to hide it. I do think that schools, from my understanding, they do encourage like when there are diagnoses because of potential extra funding dollars. But yeah, it's just like right now there just aren't enough supports and not enough people and not too many kids. But yeah,
I'm
I guess I'm kind of all over the place, but it's just yeah,
no, it's good.
sorry.
as you were talking, I had a little thought experiment occurred to me that I would be interested on getting your thoughts on.
Sure.
Um, one of the things going back to the book bans because I'm very, very angry about them, um,
Good.
is the it seems like school boards have been reticent to acknowledge the problem. You don't see school boards going, hey, you know what? We are totally underserving the classrooms. Everybody knows that that's the reality in far too many classrooms. I'd
Yes.
make the argument that even one is far too many. But everybody knows, especially in the major centers like Calgary and Edmonton, that is a reality. When we have pictures of kids who are doing classes in hallways or
Yeah.
in lunchrooms, that is, we are underserving these kids. Period. End of sentence. Uh,
Can I share a quote I got or
yeah,
like paraphrase something from while I was door knocking? Someone mentioned in one of the classes of over 30 kids, which they almost all are now, they said when all the kids show up for school, there aren't enough desks for everyone. So kids are sitting on the ground. Like,
yeah.
you know, so sorry, continue.
Wouldn't a great thing for school boards to do, and would this be potentially something that you would consider as a trustee if you were faced with a similar situation in the future, be
Mm-hmm.
to say, "Hey, Minister Nicolaides, great recommendations on the book bans. We'll get to it, but before we can do that, here's the list of things that we are currently under resourced to accomplish. And those are the things that we're going to be focusing our energy on. If you want to give us the money to hire 100, 200, 300, 500 new teachers, cool. We'll get right on those book bans for you, sir. But in the meantime and in between time, we are failing under the Education Act to provide what is legally mandated by you, sir. So we're going to focus on that. Is that a card that you would be tempted to play?
Absolutely. And I think it's really important. Like I do know that once trustees are elected, it gets very quiet. And I understand to some extent, but it's very hard from the outside to really know what's going on, kind of inside. But I can tell they are under the thumb of government. But I would still be really, really keen to kind of explore the contours of, the policies and procedures, just to see what avenues are at our disposal to more effectively advocate and speak out. Because I think that's the job, right? Like if we are talking, this is like a local representative position. So how can we represent the people if we can't even speak about the issues that are affecting them? So I don't, and I'm going to be honest, I don't fully understand at this time what the constraints are. I've read the kind of the handbook for trustees and stuff, and I do know that a lot of the messaging and key messaging is pretty tightly controlled, but I would really want to look at finding ways of loosening that up just so that we can actually have real conversations with government, but also with each other, because I really think it does a disservice to be tight lipped to the point of saying nothing.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you. And I do want to be clear. I am not by any means trashing all of the school board trustees that are out there.
Oh, no, no, it's okay.
I have a fantastic school board trustee in my area.
All
She's
good.
amazing. She listens to my rants from time to time when I have like, what the hell is this moments. But there are it has always baffled me why there is not an admission of, yeah, we have some priorities that we have to deal with here, and you've just added something else to the mix, and that's cool and everything. But we have these other legal mandates that we have to meet as well, and we're gonna
Right.
deal with them in order of issue or whatever. Uh,
Yes. And honestly, like that is an excellent point. Like the legal mandate to educate all children isn't even being met.
this is
Add to that, what's that?
this is what I'm saying. Like
Yes,
that to me should be the first go to. We're
it
not
is
doing
or
anything
should be.
extra until this is what happens. That
Exactly. And this is the thing, we're treating too many. marginalized kiddos education is optional rather than the mandatory human right that it is. And add to that, do you know the situation of undocumented kiddos or kiddos of undocumented parents?
I heard there was one of these just that got famous in Edmonton, wasn't there?
Well, the situation is we have at least, to our knowledge, and there's probably more, nine kiddos, public school age or school age kids, who are being denied access to public schools
Yeah.
because their parents are undocumented. Some are even Canadian citizens. And the public schools are forbidding them from being part of school. They're citing, even though they have full authority to enroll them, they're refusing, citing the cost.
If nine kids are going to be the thing that break the education system, it's already broken.
Exactly. And that's just absolutely unacceptable. If, again, we can afford to pay our superintendent over $300,000, but we are kicking out disabled kids from the classroom, locking them up in seclusion rooms, and then telling, sorry, one sec. Griffin, I'm just in a meeting. Yeah, sorry. He's just like, he's started punching his punching bag. Uh,
Oh,
but yeah, anyway, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, one second. Griffin, could you please, honey? I, yeah, sorry about that.
all good. All good. I was just to back up a little bit before the minor interruption there. Um,
Yeah,
it, you were talking about the costs of all of the like if we can't afford to put these nine kids in school,
yeah,
what are we even doing here?
yeah, exactly. It's so sad because it ends up being at the whim of individual school administrators, and whether either they notice or they care. Some principals have said, I see nothing, you keep going to school. And others, as soon as they find out, they remove them from school. And there are some families here where one sibling is enrolled in one school and the other sibling of different age, obviously, has been turned away from school. And some up to 2 years are just sitting at home. And not only that, but the parents are put in a precarious position if they're undocumented. I was just at a meeting with Migrante Alberta recently, and they said one parent was apprehended at, I don't know if it was like a school concert or something. This is what she told me, and my Spanish isn't as good anymore, but from what I could tell, there's again that fear of being apprehended and just that lack of security for families. And so that's something that absolutely needs to change.
Yeah, that's wild. To me, the notion that we would say any kid who says, I'd like to go to school, the answer should always be yes. I don't
Yes,
care.
and it's
Don't care about the
mandatory.
circumstances.
Yeah, like they're residents of Edmonton, like, and we're the richest, like per capita, like we're the richest province in terms of GDP per capita. Like this shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want people to hear? Is there anything else you want people to say? I want to reiterate you're running in Ward A. Um, I don't know what communities that involves because I live in Calgary. So the floor is yours.
Oh, no, just I really appreciate your time. And for folks who tuned in, like, thank you so much. Thank you for caring about public education. Even if you don't have kids, public public education is so important. It impacts everything. And I just encourage you guys to learn about the candidates. First of all, learn which ward you're in and find out about the candidates and talk about it. Talk about, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. We need more people engaged in these processes. It's so important. And let's fight for our schools and our school boards. We don't want to see a situation where our school boards get dissolved and that we lose that local representation. And yeah, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Where can people, if they want to know more about your campaign, if they want to know if they want to volunteer or donate or whatever, where do people find you?
For sure. So they can find me on Facebook, like Nicole Renaud APSV. as well as social media. And sorry, my kid was doing a bunch of like gymnastics next to me. And yeah, just I'm out there and always happy to hear from people and really appreciative for the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's it for another episode of The Breakdown. As always, if you appreciate the kind of content that we're trying to produce here, we would love nothing more than if you thought about signing up to be one of our Patreon sponsors at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab, where for just the price of a fancy cup of coffee a month, you can help us continue to produce this kind of content. Whether you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, in which case, maybe leave a review and a rating, or whether you're watching it on one of our streaming platforms, we want to say a big thank you to everybody who is part of the Breakdown's audience. And as always, take care of each other and keep the conversation going.